The altruistic thought in wanting to have the greatest enlightenment occurs with compassion as its basis. If by planting some seed, and if there was a sprout, then it has actually risen with the base land as the basis. Without the soil, the sprout cannot emerge. Bodhisattva is actually a thought to gain enlightenment, and the base to have those thoughts is actually the compassion. So, if but how is compassion caused? Without altruistic thought, you can never have compassion. Uh, there's no chance to have compassion without altruistic thought. So, with selfishness, if you want to practice Buddhism, that's 100% a lie. That's almost like we just hang seed out in the air, up in the air, and it became a sprout, and we harvested fruit. It'll be similar to that. So the thoughts to gain enlightenment, just like Buddha, when we have such kind of thoughts, then we need to have compassion. And compassion occurs with altruistic thought as basis. And since compassion is not an easy feeling to have, and even altruistic thought, it's just like beans growing in a drought. So that since it's difficult to have, you need to have two essential thoughts here. The first one is we don't have to go so far away to the samsara, but uh, the base question could be are we happy living in this current universe? If we are just living, smoking, drinking, going to different places, are you happy? And if you are, then in a very simple way, with very extreme thoughts, if you ask, do you think you'll be happy when you die? And then you start having fear. And so, with life and death issue, there's hardly anyone who will not be scared. Whatever it is, uh, it's a reality that we will be moving from suffering to happiness, and we have to observe that very well. And with that, where is the person who is to come with you? And so, without observing suffering, and also uh, if you don't have the thoughts to escape from the suffering, then you will have no efforts to escape from it, and then you will have no reason to practice. And so, while observing the suffering, if you miss one thing, then the situation also provides uh, that you could also be selfish again. That I am unhappy, I'm suffering, and I need to escape from the suffering. You will have this thought too. But even if we realize that everyone is going through life and death, this is not an easy feeling to have. And you can just be satisfied with you trying to practice this. So, well, even fathers, it is not easy for them to do. Normally, fathers are very strict. Maybe you have good memories of your dad, but And also, there are times when you miss your mother, but actually, your mothers have kicked you out of the house. If you did not get married, then they would have made you go through a very difficult time. Uh, Mostly, boys they don't have such a favorable relation with your fathers. The fathers are bound to chase away the children, the sons. Even though animals, it's the same. If they cross 17 to 18 years old, then they are bound to fight with your father, and the father, the stronger power that the father has in the household, the children are bound to run away sooner. So most of them, uh, when they after puberty, after adolescent age, when they want to go to boarding schools, that's in order to escape from the father. uh, if the sons are enjoying good time with their fathers, then that's a very different, that's very extraordinary situation. Even in olden time, the Sado crown prince, he was killed by his own father, and daughters they are being chased away by their mothers. Although we claim that we will think of good things that the mother has done for us, but when we leave the house, we have to take away everything that mother has because they have chased you out. You also want to take out as much as you can. But when you think of the things and the grace that your mother has shown on you, then uh, then you also have to think that your mother will be having a difficult time when she is also uh, going through her samsara, because human beings, our mind is, our heart is very selfish, and if only if you think of it that way, you have a little. Although we ask you to live in an altruistic life, basically, even when we ask you to provide or be generous, you're actually doing it so that good things would happen to you. But if you look at it that way, you also become selfish. That's why we say you should only offer without expecting anything in return. You should not have the thought of I behind you that's going to come back to you. Whichever consequence that you're going to face, even becoming Buddha, the charm lies in giving out to everyone, but there is no meaning in you expecting that you'll gain enlightenment. So enlightenment, that is not for, if it's not facing for all other sentient beings, well, you might face a little comfort, but that is not actually enlightenment. And that's why if you observe silently, then you say, when I said I want to become like Buddha, what is its basis? The basis for compassion is the sense of altruism. And why is it not coming? Because of your greediness. So your act of trying to enact it, we're starting off from our way of samsara and being born as a human. That is also not a true form of happiness. But that is also I'm aging and I'm doing something here. Again, there's a question of I. Then what are we going to do here? From my mother, I've been very blessed and I got a lot of grace from my mother. But still, uh, there's also a method of having the altruistic thought. It's kind of formula. But when you have such altruistic heart or mind, what happens to you? So when you want to proceed to enlightenment, what happens? my greediness and my persuasive thoughts, my persistent, they start falling off. Uh, if While maintaining your greediness and the thoughts for yourself, you can never be selfish. You can never be selfless. Very basically, human beings or animals, when we are born, if we have not cultivated something in our previous life, under person we are bound to be selfish. It doesn't work in our brain that we want to be selfless. It's a big problem. So, although Buddha has said that, and although things have been uh, processing that way, in Korean Buddhism, we forget about all the things and we just try and proceed in the way, in a selfish way. Whereas someone said, if I can only sell this monastery, well, selling, we cannot sell it in a legal way. Legally, we are not allowed. If I can sell it, by selling it, I would, uh, if there is anyone who is suffering because of money, I would like to give it. If you can sell it, then there's nothing that uh, blocks us from selling it. And and Buddha has also said that even if they are breaking the statue, you should not be angry because by breaking the statue, there is nothing that's harming Buddha actually. Even the monasteries, if we are being selfish about them, saying, that's our monastery, and if we are just being a groupist who are just thinking of something that's belonging to me, then there is also something that is not true. Since it's something to be ashamed for, well, it is not very cool. So the thought to have the greatest enlightenment, this kind of altruistic thought, it arises with compassion as its basis. Without altruism as the very basis, you never have the thought to trying to gain enlightenment. And this way, you need to have a strong motivation, altruistic motivation. Uh, you will start accumulating virtuous karma of samatha and vipassana. So let's think about it. If you have greedy or selfish thoughts, and if you are being greedy about us, it becomes greediness. And if you are obsessed with religion, it becomes a persistence. With selfishness and persistence, can there be a thought to or wish to gain enlightenment? And if you say the thought to gain enlightenment is arose, then I think there is a wrong misunderstanding. It doesn't happen. But still, if you say we can gain enlightenment, that's way more difficult than trying to make soybean paste from the red bean. So even the motivation for the virtues, it has to be altruistic. And also, the base as the enlightenment is given, it still needs a lot of different things. And without understanding this law, although we know what is Buddhism, it's actually that we don't know it. So even practicing samatha and vipassana is the
시간을
same.
하는 것도 역시 마찬가지로 시간도 역시 마찬가지로
Without the
이타적인 동기가
altruistic motivation
연결되지
as
않은
its
것은
basis,
습관이 되지
it doesn't
않는다.
become samatha and vipassana.
그런 얘기예요.
Now it's time to study
이제
vipassana.
무한에
To
대해서
understand
공부할
the ultimate
차례입니다.
form
호흡기능
and to
실제
practice
깨닫기 위한
vipassana, then you
무한을
need to have a
실천하는
proper
문제. 무아에
understanding
대한
of absence of I.
많은 이해가 필요하다. 무아에 대한
The absence
무아라는
of
것이
I refers to
불교의
amongst
불교
Buddhist teachings.
가르침
It
가운데
is the most
제일
essential
안에
thing.
핵심적인 내용이에요. 건강에 있어 무아, 무인, 무중생,
They say you can
무시라타는
only
이하야
become
보살이라는
bodhisattva
아상이상 중생상 유아상이상
if you
중생상이면
have let go of
무조건 보살이
everything.
아니다.
If you
보살이
are
아니랄
attached to
거다.
something, then you are not actually a bodhisattva. So if
그래서
we
무아는
explain
뭐냐고
absence of I in a very simple
설명을
way,
하면 요거는 그저께
well, although I explained this
여러
in
군데서 내가
many
설명을
different
갖다 이제
places
계속 하고 있기 때문에
to argue whether
불교가
it's
기냐
Buddhism or
아니냐
not,
요걸 따질 때는
the question
무아를
is,
정확하게
we can
설명했느냐
we
하지
can say,
않았느냐
have we explained
무아를 얘기하고 있느냐
if you have understood the
무아를
absence of I,
얘기하고
or
있지 않느냐 유아를
if
얘기하느냐
there's I
여기에서
presence of
갈립니다.
I, the difference
아무리
can be
무슨
differentiated
물상을
from it.
마셔놓고
Although we are
뭘
reciting
이름을
the
불고 한다
mantras and
손치더라도
although we have many statues,
무아라는
if
것이
the absence of
연결하지
I
않을
is not
때는
the basis, then we
그건
can
아닙니다.
say that it's not Buddhism. So, so what is absence
그래서
of I?
무아는 뭐냐? 지금 우리가 이 세상에 존재하고 있는
Everything
이
that's
세상의
existing in
모든
this world,
것들이
if you just look at
가만히 놓고
them,
보면 변하지 않는
then we
어떤
feel that there's a
어떤 실체가
characteristic
안에
or
있는 것
form that
같다.
doesn't change. If we
변하지 않는
say the
실체가 있는
tree
것
over
같다.
there,
조명나무 그러면
it seems like there's
개목나무의 안에
something that in the tree
뭔가
that doesn't
변하지
change.
않는
Even
뭐가
for the
있는 것 같고
human, you
사람도
feel that there's
변하지
a part
않는
of
내가
me that
뭔가
doesn't
있는 것
change.
같고 몸도 우리가
Although
변하는 것
the
같고
body changes and the thought
생각도 변하는 것
changes,
같고
you still
그런
feel that there's
뭔가가
something that
안
doesn't
변하는
change.
뭐가 있는 것 같아.
And so
그걸
far, all the
모든 종교
religions
철학들은 이렇게
they
주장을
claim
했습니다.
that there's something that doesn't change.
그래서 이제
And in Western world, they
불교에서는
say
혼이
because there's a
있어서
spirit,
삼원칠백이 있어서 어디로
they
뭐,
say
뭐
one
혼
spirit
하나는
goes
산으로
to
가고 혼
grave
하나는 뭐
and one
집에
state
밑에
goes
있고
to the
하나는
ancestors.
또 저 뭐
And
조상한테 가고
if
뭐
they cannot
조상이 별
have
능력이
the
없으면 뭐 문
uh,
앞에 서 있든지 어쨌든 하여튼 그렇게 하고
have the
그래서
potential to meet their
혼이
ancestors, then
있다고
they
생각을
would
했다.
go wait in front of the door, and they
그게
thought that
이제
something like this would happen. And generally,
또
they also
일반적으로는 뭐
thought
영이
that the
있다고
spirit
생각한다.
exists.
영은 신령스러운
And
영이 있다고.
and by collaborating them
그걸
together,
하면서 영
they also
몸이
say it is
그것도
the
하기도
spirits.
하고.
And if you also
또 이제
look
좀
at it in
용어를
a
더
wrong
숙이면
way, they said
귀신인 줄
something
알고
like a
그러기도
ghost.
하고.
And in countries like
또
India,
인도 같은 데는 저 위에서 하나 뭐가 떨어져 내려와가지고 자석처럼 하나
something
떨어져
got
내려와가지고
detached, and
아트만이
they
하나
call it
돼서
something
그게
like
배가
Atman,
됐고
and
뭐 이렇게 됐다.
something that doesn't
안
change.
변하는 게 하나 있다.
And in
기독교에는
Christianity,
뭐
they
그런 게
did not say
있다라고 이제
something like
하지는
that
않는데
exists, but
누가
they
그러냐면
thought that there's
하여튼
something like
천국에
going
가는
to
뭐가 하나
heaven,
있다
whether
그러고
it is a
그걸 막 영이라
spirit
그러든지 뭐라
or
그러든지 하여튼
however they try to
천국에
call it.
뭐 가리라
But
그런
I
그
don't think
사실
they actually
사실 뭐
said
영어는 그런
something
얘기를
like a
안 한 것 같아.
spirit.
내가
When I
조마모고
saw
마라테나
many
육아나 멸치볶음이나
different
보니까
books of John or whatever it is,
멸치볶음은 아니고 응? 누가 볶음 요한볶음 예? 마가볶음 그거는 하여튼 복음이라는 게
when they say
행복한
the
그런 뜻이
book
아니야.
of something is actually the sayings to become
그런
happy.
뜻이거든. 어떻게 행복해지냐 그 얘기들이거든. 근데 실제
But in reality, all those
그런 종교에 대한
religions
철학들은 전부 다 뭐가
or
있다라는
these
것
gospels,
생각고
they try to spread the
그쪽에
word
있는
that
또
something
기독교에도
happy
그런 것들이
exists,
아무것도 없다.
something exists. But
이
there are
세상
also
물질이
some
전부야
materialist
그걸
people who say
그런
that
주장을
they
하는
don't
거죠.
exist.
그 불교는
But in
이게 누가
Buddhism,
이야기하니까 유물로
they
얘기하면 유물
try
아니거든.
to say that in a material way, but they could say that in a materialistic way
마음이
it doesn't
변하는
exist. So they
것이
say it is a hurt,
마음이라는 자체를 갖다 유물로 해서
and they
인정을
did
안
not
하고
accept the hurt as something as a
인정을
material.
한다고 치더라도 그것도 물질적인 현상으로만 봐버리는 거야. 그래서 그네들은 이 마음이 정신적인 것이 일어나서 변화하는 것을 갖다 이
And
사람들은
since they don't accept the fact,
인정 안 하기 때문에 그게 정치적 현실로 나타날 때는 사회적 현실로 나타날 때는
they become someone that for their interest, although a lot of people have been killed, they don't really bother. And that's why in Buddhism,
그래서 불교에서는 암 변화는 그 어떤 실체를 가진 암 변화는 하고 영원한 실체를 가진 그
in
어떤
Buddhism,
것도
it's been
이 세상에
claimed that
존재할 수 있다.
nothing is eternal in this world. Everything
따라
comes and
일어났다가
disappears with
일어났다가
the relations.
사라지는 것이다. 그래서 인연 따라
So,
났다 인연 따라 사라지는
when you
것이다라고
say
하는
things
것이
come and go
뭐를
with the
전제로 하는
relation, is
얘기냐면
based
무한을
on
전제로
absence
해.
of I,
무한은 다른 말로
and
하면 그
and
성질
since the
자체가 영원히
characteristic
불변하는 것이
itself,
없기
there's
때문에
nothing
그게
that
있으니까
lasts
그런 거야.
forever. It is empty. It is void.
그런 얘기란 말이야.
Where is 청정심?
청정심은 어디 갔나?
Why is she
뭐
still
서울에
at
뭐
Seoul?
뜬기 있나 왜 다 서울 왔어? 그래서 이
So, without a proper understanding and observation and perception of absence of I, even if you're practicing samatha, you cannot have a proper or normal samatha.
일어나질 않아요. 정상적인 사마타가 일어나지 않는다.
The phenomenon, you have to keep researching for the phenomenon that there is nothing that we can call ourselves as I. It is not just enough with believing it. We have to understand deep within in our hearts that there is nothing in this world that we can call as I. Listen carefully. Through Buddha's teaching, is good to understand and good to have perception that there's absence of I and there's no and with proper samatha cultivated, whichever object you're looking at, they don't have a true form. You should not just believe that it could be so, but you should fear that whichever object that you're looking at is not eternal. And just like Diamond Sutra, and just like shadow, just like water drop, things will disappear. And you should be able to observe in this manner. Then only the attachments will start to break off. And that's actually true. Nothing is ever rigid and eternal, so everything will change and disappear. If you don't observe this way, then you will keep believing that this has a form and this is something that I can have attachment and I can be attached to. And while having so much attachments, well, those are the things with the end of your relation, they will just wither away and disappear just like a shadow. If you're not able to observe this, then you will keep having problems. The children that I give birth to, and also the mother and my properties, my siblings, all of them, they will just come and go with their relations. If there is something that doesn't disappear, it'll be great, but nothing in this world doesn't disappear. If you don't observe this
이렇게
way
관찰을 하지 않으면
about absence of
무아지한
I and
우상이라는
absence of
관찰을 하지 않으면
others,
그냥 다
then you will
100%
live
썩고 살고
believing
헛군데
has
헛안 두고
something
살고
wrong, and you'll be
헛군데
holding
기대가
on to
썩어졌기에
something
드레미
that
발레
it
다
doesn't
떨어져버리고
exist and you're
다
full
실패.
of. So whichever object that you are
어떤
looking
대상을
at,
바라볼 때도 여러분 어떤 대상을 바라볼 때도
the true
그
form, just
실체가
observe it,
가만히 한번 관찰해 봐봐.
which has its
어디에
form and
무엇이
can be
실체가 있어
eternal.
영원할 수 있는 것이 있겠는가?
They don't exist.
없단 말이야.
And only if you are able to observe that
관찰이
way,
되어져야 모든 것으로부터
the sense of
집착이 원하고
attachment
뚝뚝뚝
will start breaking off. Without observing these
이런
things,
관찰을 하지 않고
and if you look at the world,
세상을 딱
then
바라보면
you will be fooled by
모든
everything.
것을 다 쏘가. 쏘가. 그것도
That
전부
too,
다
it all
인연
happens
따라서
following the
이루어지는 것이기 때문에
relations. So you feel that your
우리는
children
자식이
would be
나보다
living longer
좋아
than you,
생각하지만 그렇지
but
않아.
that is also
인연
sometimes not
따라서
true.
그런 거야.
They all happened with the relations. Our greediness, we feel
우리가
that
운이
that is actually
없으면 그렇게 하는
suffering,
것이
but
불행하다
in
생각하지만
this world,
이
the
세상의 인생이라는
relations,
것은
the
길고 짧은 것이 금방금방
eh, the relations, they
그냥
do not
순서대로
have a
이렇게 된다.
particular order.
그게 순서 없는 인연
Not
따라서
having the
사는 것이고
order is the
순서
order.
없는
The
것이
order that we
순서다.
have chosen
우리가
or
순서하고 정해진
decided,
순서는 맞지
it is
않은
not
순서야.
actually correct. You understand what I am trying to say? That is
무슨
the
말인지
wrong
알겠죠?
order that we
그건
have
우리가 잘못 정해놓은
classified or
순서란 말이야.
made.
우리가 잘못 정해놓은 순서야.
The child who is dead in the
속에서 죽은
stomach,
아이는
the
애미보다도
child died even way sooner
훨씬 빨리
than the
죽었다.
mother.
우리가 정상적이라고 생각하는 비정상적이지만도
Although
정상적이라고 생각하는
it is
순서대로
abnormal
애가 태어나서
order,
나가는
but the order that
오래
but we
살다가
think is
가야
correct
될 거 아니야.
is that the child should be
깜깜
born and live longer than me and should die later than me. But even those parts we
우리가
are
그런 부분도
misunderstanding.
착각을
We are
하고 있어.
misunderstood. We feel that our children will live longer than us, but there is something not very trustworthy. It's just like your shadow can disappear anytime. Although we say we are alive now,
살아있다라고 하지만 인연 따라서 이렇게
they just are being continued following the relation and karma. But what kind of meaning can it have? They're just bound to disappear just like a water bubble.
거품처럼 사라져. 이것도 역시
This is also
거품처럼
one part of
사라지는
bubble
하나의
that's going to
거품이지.
disappear, but this is not true.
실체가 아니라
In Buddhism, there's no
우리의
true
실체가
form.
없단 말이지.
In which Buddhism is there a
무슨
true
실체가
form?
있는가?
It's just not enough believing in that, but each person by itself we have to observe carefully. And when we have such a difficult time and when our hearts are moving or shaking, we have to think. So even when we are praying for virtues, how very meaningless is that? I will not do it even if they give me money. When we ask people to observe, people get scared. They believe that there's something how everyone else lives. How are you asking us to live on, throwing away everything? when we were child, when you were young, while chewing it, when it's about time to sleep, we have to stick it somewhere. And when we try to sit on the tree, a lot of insects crawl around. And if you put it on the wall, then when you try to take it off, then the papers they are also there, and we take away the paper and we chew it again. But nowadays a lot of people throw away the gum and they chew new ones, and they throw away all the chewing gums that they've been chewing everywhere, and it's just everywhere on the street. So I also had a thought that by collecting all the chewing gums that's been thrown away, we could build a new road. So just like a gum, if you have attachment for it, then the paper could be torn, the wallpaper. Well, someone said uh, because they died sooner, it was almost like a part of my heart was being torn. We understand that, right? But I felt this like a chewing gum. But even when your heart was being torn away, that's because of the chewing gum that you put it at the wrong place. Because you put it on a paper, the wallpaper came out together with it, and together with the footsteps of flea that walked on it, you have to chew it. When we say we are living in this mundane world, living in such a chewing gum, we call it mundane world. With the chewing, with the emotions we live, and they are just like two different sides of the blade. So, in an instance, they could also become an enemy. So it is not matter of us to live with emotions. Uh, if you ask with which we have to live, you have to live with the relations, not emotions. There is no basis which we can call it is I. We have to confirm that deep in our heart. We have to check for sure that there doesn't exist something that we call I, and also my thoughts. The wrong thoughts, if we possess them, is furthermore. It's almost like just having garbage, and if you're just having greatness, it's almost like holding on to bathroom. It will stink. When you listen to people with so much greatness, then each time they speak, you can smell the foul odor. Whether it is worldly or religious, regardless of them, we have to, just like we check with our eyes, we need to have logic, and also in a debatable manner. With that, we need to be able to check. So in Diamond Sutra, with the sunlight, just like when the sun shines in the sunlight, just like you see all different colors. The absence of I through uh, through the provingness of logic, it becomes very clear in the mind. You have to check that there is nothing that you need to be attached at. If
꿈어가
you have the wrong
어떤
thoughts,
꿈까지 잘못
then just like
붙여놓거든.
a gums that sticks onto you, things will happen.
그냥 남편하고도 그냥
So
같이 그냥
even with your
냅다 같이 사는
husband,
거야. 그게
you
정해진
just
삶은
leave
아니거든.
and you just go away.
정해졌다고 해서
It is
맨날
not
그런 일은
it is not
위에서
the
또
object
올라다가
that you
또
live together
똑같은
with
기분을
your
좀 줄까봐.
objective.
내가 지금 사는 것을
Also,
돈
if you
때문에
say
사실 미국에서 살지
you're just
않습니까?
living with your husband with
떨어져 사는
money,
것이 훨씬 더 편하겠다.
well,
지금
for the
할머니들하고
grandmothers, it
떨어져
could be
살고 밥도
easier
좋고
if you're just
영감박도
living
지금 주려고
alone.
하시는데 할머니들은 경로당에 가서 밥도 주든지 잘해
Husbands,
먹고 영감은
they
필수기야.
cannot do
그것도
that.
못해주고.
They cannot even go and prepare a meal for themselves.
유행의 물질적인 대상을 볼수
The
있고 만질 수 있기
object
때문에 직접 유행의 물질은
that has a form, since we can
그것은
see and we can
우리가
touch,
이제
we can
손으로
check in
보기도 하고
person.
만져보기도 하고 뭐 다 그렇게
But
되자는 거죠.
in order to
그러나
prove
모호한 현상의
the
존재를 갖다
object of
입증을
phenomena which is unclear and also not very decisive,
그러니까
we need to have a
우리가
we need
이제
to be clear
무한하다는
in a
개념을
logical and also
정확하게
in a way that is
하려고
acceptable.
하는 것은
So
그건 물질이 아니고 실제 논정의 방식이란 말. 그러니까 논리적으로 이게 이렇게 그
through the
논리적
logical
증명을
proof,
통해서
it's
그게
important to
그렇구나 하고
check.
확인을 하는 것이 중요하다. 그러니까 이게 만약에 뭐라 그러나
If you say
약식을 논리적 증명이
it's useless to have this logical, it's useless to prove in a logical way, you can just believe. That's not okay. It's important
정확하게
to check for
확인하는
sure.
것이 중요하다. 오늘 강주보살들은 안 한 얘기죠? 요, 어?
Today, the Gwangju ladies are not here. They think you are not, you are gone. Well, I haven't died yet. I'm not yet died. My obituary is not out yet.
네? 티베트 때는 뭐 다음 생이나
Maybe in my next life in Tibet.
그저 뭐야 다음 생에는 그래도 전생에 그 승려 생활을 조금씩은 했는지
Well, in my next life,
속가에 별로 인연이 없고 그 어려서 출가
I think it's fortunate that I became monk when I was very young. But in my next life, when I'm about 5 or 6 years, I wish to be born at a place where there's a great teacher and I could study. I don't think those mundane worldly studies has got anything to do with life. We cannot even what's going to do with it. But if you're just alive until you die, it's good enough. Whether we die of starvation or whatever it is, anyhow we are alive until we die. And even when I was building the White Lotus in Hwayangmyeon, when everyone else was complaining, well, we built it. Whether it is even 80% complete, we built it. It's more than enough.
뭐 서울을 가다가도 뭐 대전쯤 가도 서울은 대전이 아니기
Well,
때문에
although
그러나
Daejeon, Seoul is not Daejeon, but on the way,
수행도 그렇게 해야 돼. 죽자 살자 하다가 이 생을 마치고
on the way we got close, and so even the practice you have to do it like that. While doing it, well, when I went to Ajanta Alora,
굴이 157개인가 뭐 돼.
they have built caves inside the rocks, about 157, and it's not that they have just carved it, but
나도 저으로 한번 쪼아 보니까
the stones. I tried to hit it, and if we hit it, then it just like bounces back. It's very difficult to carve into them. Your hands would hurt. And while carving it, even the pillars they just carved it. It's not that they made another pillar and brought it. And even to the statue, it is one stone. So some of the caves, it took them hundreds of years to do it. And when someone while carving, if he feels like it's about time for him to go,
우리 애기들한테
then
그렇게
he'll
의지보고
prepare tools and just put it somewhere
그러니까 우리 건드지 마시오.
and say, oh, I'm going to come back after 17 years, and so don't touch it. And about 17 years later, some youngster would come and say, oh, I put my tools there.
가지고 또 팽팽 거는 거야.
And he would take it out and again carve the cave.
그렇게 돼야 돼, 그죠?
It should happen so.
어젯한 일도 잊어버려가지고
But we even forget things that happened yesterday.
핸드폰을 어떤 거 찾다 보니까
And while looking for our mobile phones, it's in the fridge.
리모컨 틀라고 리모컨 가지고 텔레비 틀라고 보니까 핸드폰 가지고 이러고 왔다.
Even when we try to switch on the TV with the remote con, we are actually trying to do it with the mobile, and we went out to get something from the market, but we realized that we have forgotten, and we have actually brought something else, and that's the kind of things that we do.
잊어버려가지고
You go many times often because you forget. We keep forgetting those things, but about past life we forgot it all and we don't even remember.
무아에는 인무아와 법무아
In absence of I, we have two different types.
인무아 법무아 두 가지가 있다. 여기서 인이란 정신적으로나
And
물리적으로
here,
온 덩어리를 말하는 색수상행식
in refers to the lump where
색수상행식 그 어떤 것도
whether spiritual or material, they are gathered together.
나 또는
In general acknowledgement, the spirit or the
마음을 지배하는 것처럼 보입니다. 따라서 일반적인 수준에서
body, it feels like there is actually the spirit existing, but it is actually
뭔가 부분들이
a chemical collaboration of the two.
물질은 보입니다. 그래서 불교에서는 오온거래요. 다섯 가지가 우리 요 온자를 갖다 글자 그대로만 쌓였다.
That's why we say five accumulated things.
좀 더 안에 내용을 좀 더 설명식으로 하면 쌓였다 그런 것보다는 뭐 캐캐 쌓였다.
But if we study this a little more,
다섯 가지의 행체가 모여서 이루어지는.
it is actually a form where five different things have gathered together.
모였다 하는 것이
Not that accumulated, but I think it's more precise to say gathered together.
모여서 우리 사람이라는 보틀라카 인간이라는
Things have gathered and form a human being.
여기에 색 지수화풍을 나라고 할 것이냐 그것도 아니고
So what are we going to call ourselves as?
지금 받아들이는 감각작용을 나라고 할 거냐 그것도 아니고
Are we going to say the body form or the thoughts arising or senses?
또 이연 따라 일어나는 거죠. 그 내가 이제 의지작용을
Since even the thoughts, they come and go, so we cannot say that's ours. And even the spirituality, can we say it's ours? Well, that is also a phenomenon, so we cannot say that's actually us.
내가 지금 알았다라고 일으키는 지적인 거
So the knowledge that we know,
이 알았다라고 뭔가 내가 알았다는 이걸 나라고 할 거냐면 그것도 알았다 몰랐다 하는 것이 이게 순간적으로 일어나는 거예요.
but even knowing and unknowing, they arise instantly and they disappear too. So when you are talking about
오식 전 오식하고
the forms
감각기관으로 받아들이는 다섯
or
가지
matter,
이식하고 그다음에
those five senses that we take, and when we get them together, we have a consciousness form. And so
GPS가 생기면서
while having the GPS that says it's me, whether it befits me or doesn't, and also the sense of discrimination,
내가 아니란 말이야. 그럼 80에
are we going to call that ourselves? Well, even that's not me. And then if the accumulated karma, if we can we call it ourselves, where there is just an accumulated karma, so we cannot say it's us. So it's just a phenomenon that everyone has gathered together, but there's actually no I. There's no I which will be lasting forever and which would be which doesn't change. In our general knowledge, we believe that there is actually a body or I existing, but and also they believe there is Atman existing, but it is actually a chemical collaboration of them of them together. The body that existing by taking it as us, having the consciousness, we take self acknowledgement, and we can deny such an Atman through understanding or study of knowledge. We can understand the Atman that we call as I doesn't exist. If we understand the absence of self, the wisdom for this grows. When we have consciousness, we have a GPS for ourselves gets developed. So although we are sitting here, we can at least make out the directions that this is best and this is, and even the question of asking what day is it today, we also have to provide the basis that is something that, like, when you look at the calendar, we realize what day is it, and since yesterday was someone's birthday and when's the birthday, we need to have a basis for which we take. So, like when you are measuring the land, we start off from the platform and say, and we by taking that as basis, we decide, and such a standard. So in our brain, there's a standard or basis for space and also thoughts and many different things, just like a navigation. Even the navigation is just one different form of it, and amongst it, the basis for space or direction or my consciousness from this GPS, by making our territory, there is a consciousness called I. So in reality, if you ask if it is that side, then it is east from my perspective, from my standard, my basis. And so if from someone else's point of view, it is not east. So in reality, in such absence of I, in such a state, if we remove the thing called I, then what happens? Then we realize that east, west, south, and north doesn't exist in reality, even good and bad. We are looking at it from point of view of I. That's why we say, if this is tasty for me, we say it's good, and if it's not tasty for me, we say it's not good. And if we remove I from here, then what happens? The sense of discrimination starts to fade away. Then the mind that discriminates, if it fades away, then uh, the stillness or I becomes the absence of self, and we realize that I does not exist, and it was just a creation from my misunderstanding, and by understanding it, what kind of phenomena is formed. With the sense of discrimination, the mind to start an argument disappear, and the wisdom for prajna starts off from there.
지금
the
이
thoughts that
정말
we raise.
스마트하고 딱 그게 그렇구나
When
하고
we
이걸
listen to
새로운
Buddha,
우리의
since we make a standard
의식인 것처럼
out
돼
of it,
있지만은요
we
그걸
feel that it is
지식으로
like a wisdom,
받아들이는
but
상황이지
it is
내가
just a
그때
phenomenon that we
사마타를 통해서
intake as a
직접
wisdom, but
이루어진 지혜는 아니라 그 말이야.
it is not actually a wisdom that we have cultivated through samatha.
이렇게 되면서 이제 무아에
And
대한
while this
정확히
happens,
이 무아에 대한 이 나라는 것이
we double check
본질적으로
or we
그
reconfirm
예,
the thing of
결정돼
essence of
있는
self.
나의 중심이 없구나라는 것을 갖다 하면서 이제 나에 대한 공성을
And we
갖다
also
느끼기
understand that there is no center, I as a center, and we start feeling the
나에 대한
voidness
공성을 갖다 느끼기
of
시작한다.
voidness for ourselves.
분무하는 인식의 대상이나 마음의
The
원리를
things
분무하는 것이
without
없다는 것입니다.
independent individuality,
분무하라는 것은 뭐냐면
uh,
우리가
we
의식에서
say there is no actual character that we can
의식에서
say.
나를 중심으로
There is no
삼고
awareness or
나를
realization
그것을 갖다
that we can
가지고서
actually say that's our own personality.
분별해서
Uh, with the
분별하는
sense of discrimination,
사고를
we have
가지고
identified,
어떤
and with the sense of
생각
identification,
속에 질서를 만들어내는 거야.
we kind of
그걸
create
철학이라고
a
그래.
discipline in our thoughts, and
생각의
that
질서를
we
이제
call philosophy.
그럼
We are
생각의 질서를
building
갖다
the
이제
philosophy
만들어내서
of
자꾸 이제
thoughts,
아
and by
이런
creating
것이
them,
이런 생각이 옳을 것이야. 이 생각은 변치 않는 생각이야. 그 우리가
we
이제
think that
전
this thought
세계에서
would be
뭐
right
이슬람
and
철학이나
that
뭐
thought
세속
doesn't
철학, 동양
change.
철학 할 것 없이
Uh,
철학이라고 하는 것들은
in
왜
this
철학마다
world,
다 다를까?
everything, regardless of a Western
다
philosophy
달라.
or Eastern philosophy,
그죠?
why are they all
공통된
different?
것이
They're
많은 거
all different.
다른
Well,
점이
of course, they
대낮이다.
have some similarities, but most of them
저
are
이제
different. For
제자들처럼
example,
무슨 뭐 일단 법과 도가 뭐 그런 그건 전부 다 철학적인 내용들이야.
in China, when they talk about the
그
way
철학적인
and many
내용들인데 이
different things,
철학적인
they're all
내용들을 갖다가
philosophical things.
뇌에서
And what are those philosophical
우리의
things? In the brain,
뇌에서 대뇌에서 자꾸 받아들인 정보를 가지고 개념을 가지고
with the
개념의
knowledge that
개념을
has been
자꾸만
input,
정리해서 자꾸 정리해서
they take
그럴듯하게 자꾸 내면
through the
설명을
organization
하려고
of the
그런단 말이야.
concepts they try to explain, and that is philosophy.
그런데 그런 철학들도 전부 다
And even those
실질적으로 그런
philosophies,
철학들도 본질적으로
in
분별의
reality,
어떤 개념을 갖고
uh,
있는 것이 없다.
in its actual form, there is nothing that has its own eternal
분별적인 것을 갖고 있는
features.
것이 사실 하나도 없다고 말이야.
In
그러니까
reality, there is nothing that has everlasting features.
이 이제 철학적인 내용을 갖다 우리는 법이라 그러는데
So we call those philosophical aspects as the law, and in this law,
개념이 있지 않다.
there isn't a concept or idea that lasts forever. They are all just an ideology that a human being has created, and they're just conceptuals.
그래서 이 생각은 절대 변하는 것이
And
없어.
therefore, this thought doesn't change at all.
그러니까 제사는 꼭 지내야 돼. 맞지?
So, when we say it's a must that we have to make an offering to our ancestors, well, it is not true. Is it a must? Is it a necessity? Do people say that those houses which doesn't do ancestor offerings, they would fail? Then how are you going to explain about the houses that they end up in disaster, even though they have done great ancestral offerings? So in the Joseon dynasty, with the effects of the Confucianism, although there are many good values about it, all the things that led to argument and a great war, I think they're all are lies, just like Yurgok's theory and also many other things. Well, there are all things which doesn't even deserve values.
그거 가지고 싸움을 해가지고 조선 500년
Because of that, they like to argument and 500 years of Joseon's history.
고기 대가리가 저쪽으로 가는 게
They
옳고
talk about the head of the fish should side that
저쪽으로 가는 게
ways,
옳고 망하는 게
and
옳고
whether women
되게
participating and not
나는 그
participating.
사극 텔레비를 보다가
Sometimes when I watch
그때
TV,
혼자
uh, and when I see the historical aspects of it, I I sometimes feel very angry when they say, "Your Majesty, he did such a bad thing." So I thought about what happened, and then they say that person has not done ancestor offerings. What's so bad about it? Even the
처음에 안
Christianity,
믿는데 안에
uh,
귀신이 들어서
they said while they were doing witch hunting, they said the person doesn't trust because there is a witch inside of the person, and so they have to catch and burn the person to death. Uh, and and if you just kill that person, then the ghost will come and enter into somewhere else. So you have to kill that person, but that's a kind of misunderstanding. And because of the misunderstanding, when they try to kill the witch by burning, it is not actually the witch that is dead, but it is actually the person inside. Because they don't do ancestor offerings, and when they have killed many people, that is all out of their result of their persistence and also their stubbornness. What's so bad about it if they don't do the offerings to elders? Well, there are people who didn't, and the country did not fail because of that. And Joseon, the country which respected those values, why did they fail? Well, it is a good custom that respects the family and also elders. But if you are very stubborn about it, and if you say if you don't do the ancestor offerings, you're a villain or criminal, that's kind of a very bad belief. You should do it because it is a good custom that respects your parents. So if you think about it, it's a good thing to remember the dead on the day that they died, but even the methods, you don't have to follow the very ancestral ways. Just because you make the wrong soup, you're not required to be cursed. If you say you have prepared the wrong soup, then they say such a bad child, and because of that, the house doesn't work in success. But it's because of your gambling, in fact. So. Because we don't know the truth, by throwing away the greed, and because we don't know that if we throw away the greed, the basic platform will be shown. Since we don't know that, we just try to accumulate things, and so we say, oh, I am the good ones and you are the bad ones. That's not okay. And if you say the evils or foolish people, are you going to kill them, or what are you going to do with them? With the current logic, we have to put them down in the sea or something, but that's all a lie. That is all that's all because of their attachments. They have to relax their attachments to their thoughts a little. So this thing called attachment or fetish to dharma, when we think that there is something spiritually, and inside this spiritual belief, by creating a philosophical perception, and if that's unchangeable, saying that itself it is attachment. Buddha or even the things that he has said, is that they're all just methods, and so there's nothing concrete, nothing indefinite, and that's why he said even he is not an eternal being, and there will be also a lot of other Buddhas after him. But it's not like other belief where they say Jesus is the only Son of God. But I think it's people who said that, but it is not actually Jesus himself. They have made him into a sort of ghost.
나는 지금 12시 59분
I thought it was 12:59. It is 11:59, right? I was very scared. It took me by surprise.
인식 대상은 인식하는 마음의 성품 그대로
The object of your realization, it is the property or it is the personality of the mind or the heart itself. However, normally the external forms, they seem like they exist, but if you are into the external object, then you will have attachment and also anger. So when you see your husband, what do you see? Do you see your husband or do you see your hurt? You might say it's your husband, but no, you don't see your husband as he is. You see him as your greediness. The actual state is that you see your husband as how your mind or desires want, but you don't see him as he is. So he is actually your husband who you have made. Whether if you say your husband is a good person, that's because he has been good to you, and if you don't like your husband, that's because he has not been good to you. But then if you say if your husband is handsome, even that that's out of your hurt. If your husband opens the door, your husband is not opening the door and come home and say he's handsome. He's feeling it. He's looking at his own reflection through the light, and he's feeling it through his karma. Well, there are some people who is sleeping with red sunglasses, and when they open their eyes, they say it's a fire. And for him, the whole world was red, and there's nowhere for him to go. And when he was running around carrying the bucket, his glasses fell off, and he didn't see the fire, and he was wondering where the fire went. So it's all up to their like.
그러니까 우리가 대상을 바라보는 것도 전부 다
So when we're looking at the opponent or an object,
그러니까
we fear that there's a true form to them, but
이런 어떤 모양의 실체라든지 그 어떤 변치 않는 내용이 있는 것 같지만은 그건 전부 다 내가 본
we fear that there is a content or form that doesn't change. But that's all my misunderstanding, and it's all actually my content.
없다는 말이야.
They don't really exist.
그 마치 뭐 보는 것처럼 내가 그 비유를 내가 잘 한다.
To give a comparison, it's almost like looking at the mirror. When we are looking at the mirror, we are not looking at the mirror to look at the mirror, but we are actually trying to see ourselves. So we see the husband, but that's actually your reflection. If you see your husband as ugly or nice, you think your husband looks nice because he's bringing you money.
돈도 안 갖다 주고 그냥 집에서 쭈글쭈글하고 그냥 맨날
If he
헛소리
doesn't
한다고
even
뭐가 내
bring money
낄낄낄을
home,
살고
and if he's old, and if
상식이고
he's
그리고
wrinkled, and if he's only yelling at you, and if he just wants to eat at home,
한국에 가서 좀 놀다 가라도 오고 뭐 밥이라도 어디 한 끼 먹고 내가 갈 데 어디 있는가.
then you wish that he goes somewhere and
그럼
come
싫어.
home eat after eating, and you will start hating it
그래서
if he just stays
내가
at
그
home
일본에
and
그래가지고
yells at
요는
you.
많이 했는데 항원 요는
So if you think of
언제
it, in Japan,
조지큰 뭐
they divorce a
뭐
lot
논아가지고 그지 안 되나 그냥
uh,
놔둡시다고
after they get old.
항원 요는
Uh,
많이 한대.
when at the time of their resignation, so on the day they decide to separate and also divide their
그러면 더
the
부인은
pension
젊으니까 니
amount.
먼저 죽으면 돈 가지려고?
So
너네만 더
you
젊으면
want
형이
to
몇 살
bear
뒤에
for a few days,
사는데
and when your
누가
husband
먼저 죽을 줄
dies, you want
알아야지.
to take the money. But you never know who will die first.
영감님 죽으면 지재산도 아니잖아.
If your husband dies, it's not even your world. You all separated. You divided with your kids too.
그러니까 하지만 보통 외적인 행태로 존재하는
So,
것처럼 보인단 말이야.
but
근데 보이는데
but normally
실제로
you fear that
외적인
they
형태로서
exist in external
실제인
form.
것처럼
You
보이지만은
see them,
그게
but in
뭐냐면
reality, you feel that they
꼭
exist, but
지가 만들어낸 허상이들이지. 그러니까 그 대상으로서는
actually it
너는
is just
대상으로서 있어. 있는데
untrue form that you have
지금
created
인식하고
yourself,
있는
where
것은 그 대상을
the
인식하고
form
있는
is
것은
there, but
나의 마음이고 나의 업으로 보고 앉았단 말이야.
the mind that integrates or perceives the opponent is actually your
나의
heart,
마음으로.
through your own perspective, and also your karma.
외적인 대상에 빠지면 집착과 증오가 생겨납니다. 그러니까
If you
그런데
fall in the external
내가 내 마음에
object, then you will
생겨나는
also
대상을 갖다
develop
집착을
the
해가지고
attachment and
거기에서
also anger. And so, with the
내가
mind that has
감정을
been created in your
가지고서
heart, and if you
만들었다고
have attachment
큰
to
충돌을
the
합니다.
object, and if you have emotions
외적인
in
대상이
it,
오면
and if you
계속
move around, then you have a
불같고
big
시끄럽고
conflict.
불안도
And you
실제적으로
fear
나타나는
that the
것이다.
external object
그리고 그게
exists, but
수습에 나온
they also change
내
in fact.
마음이라는 것을
And
내가 볼 수 있다는 게
also
전부 다
the
내
reflection that's out
업장하고
of
혼자
it,
볼 수 있으면
it is all actually your
그게
karma. And if you're able
그걸
to
갖다
see it
일으키는
like
거죠.
that, then it doesn't cause havoc to you.
반면에 본래 존재하지 않는 인식 대상의
On
성격은
the other hand,
인식하고 있는 마음이 본성이
if
맞다는
you
것을
look
알
at
수
the
있다. 이게
object,
그러니까
if you look at the
지금
property
대상을 보는데
of
그
the perception that doesn't
대상도
exist,
이에
then you
따라서 변하는
can
것이 아니고
realize
내가
that
보는 이게
uh,
마음이라는 것도
you can
변하는 거야.
realize that it is same as
내가
the
인식의
property of
주체와
your
인식의
heart.
대상이라는
So
것이
if you
다 서로가
see
변하는 것이기 때문에
the object changes,
서로가
so
변하는
is
것이다.
your heart or your mind,
어저께의
because everything changes.
친구가 어저께 부부가 오늘은
So
부부 대표님으로
yesterday's
수가 될 수
friend,
있고
yesterday's couple, they could be greatest enemy in the world too.
따라서 저절로 집착과 정화 아니 마음의
Therefore,
본성에 따라서 저절로 집착과 정화가 줄어듭니다.
automatically the
훨씬
attachment
분명히
and
내
anger
인식
will
대상과
reduce.
인식 주관, 인식 주체 그리고 인식 작용을
It
따로
is the
인식하는
egolessness
것은
or
실제의
selflessness
본모입니다.
uh,
그러니까 이런 것들이 전부
which
다
is in
인식
taking the
대상과 인식 주체와
object of your
인식하고 있는
perception, and
작용
also
이런
your
것들이
the
전부
object of
다
ideology, and also the
이어나가는
phenomenon.
현상이지
If you intake
본질적으로
them
뭐가 있어 그런 건 아니다.
separately, then that is actually harsh egolessness. So they don't exist in reality,
대상을
but
보면서
you
이것은
actually
미쁘다
take
그런
them.
생각이 일어나는 것은 그건
And
내
while looking at the
생각이지 그쪽
person, if you
대상하고는
have the thought that
상관없어.
you hate them, it's actually your thought, but it has got nothing to do with that object or the
여기까지 합시다.
or actually the other
다음 주
form.
한 주씩
Today, let's do until here, and we are resting 1 week.
한 주씩이
Next week,
예?
we are
화요일
resting.
날
We are only
한
taking a
주
break for
이제
1
쉬고
week.
그다음에
On
7,
8th,
8, 9,
we are
10까지
taking 1 week, and
하니까 요몇 시라고
9, 8, 9, 10,
11시
11.
반에
We are
11시 반에
doing the
인터넷에
teaching. What time? At
그래서 그러면
11:30.
생중계할 거니까 예, 다그
11:30, you can see the online live, and so listen to the Dalai Lama's teaching. Listen to